The subconscious mind. I recently received some information explaining the importance of the subconscious mind when it comes to spirituality or intuitiveness. And they told me quite a few different angles, and I'm going to do my very best with a diagram to explain it to you. They asked me to put a tutorial type information together, and one of the reasons that they wanted to do this is they wanted to clear up for a lot of people that would be listening your own personal connection to spirituality, and also to understand that you are never alone, that spirit is always there, that your subconscious plays a really important role, as does sleep. So sleep and your subconscious work very closely together. Your subconscious is something that actually goes permanently, but during sleep, which is a crucial role in human existence, the subconscious becomes extremely important. So I'm going to show you my diagram as I go. Apologies, I've just hand drawn this up, so if it's a bit dodge, and I am doing my best to try and portray the information the way that I received it over 4 different nights. So initially, if we look at when someone is sleeping, and the role of the subconscious, so I actually got to witness this in a visual presentation, in effect, from Spirit, which was pretty cool. You'll see there that when we sleep, those black dots that are up there are referring to energy, or if we want to call them spirits or souls, that each night when we sleep, we actually receive information from these souls, from these energies. People will refer to them as guides. Now, while I was sleeping the other night, I actually was woken by spirit as they were giving me information, and I could see almost like I was stepping outside of my body, and I looked back and I could actually see these circles coming down and going all at once, working on my information. Now, I'd been told about dreams and the subconscious just earlier, and I have done a presentation on that. So anyone who wants to look directly just in dreams and how they work, please go back to that video. But I will basically cover it in this. So while we're sleeping, our subconscious really is there, ready to go. These energies come in, these guides. I could see when I looked at them 2 types of guides. One's of past people or past souls that I knew on earth, or had been in generations before me and were guiding my family, or in some cases were friends, so they were also guiding us. And the next one was actually just energies that I was familiar with. Since I was young, I've kind of had this energy that has come through, and I can recognize and feel that energy. During my 20s and 30s, I became more intuitive rather than really in this mediumship. But then as I've got into my 40s, and definitely now in my 50s, they've sort of lumped it on me and said, right, this is where you're going to be working from now on. And I keep receiving a lot of information, and I have been able to help a lot of people, which is really cool. And I think this message that Spirit's giving me now is for that reason, or that this energy is giving. So I recognize this energy as well. Just would like to point out too, I have seen this before, but I have seen it when someone has passed, and I love this, that I'm seeing that connection, that they're there for us every night. But when my father passed, I actually woke up and I saw these the night after he'd passed, or the night he'd passed really, and I could see all this energy coming down and actually taking him up to where he was. And that was pretty cool. That is a whole podcast on its own, to really go in the depth of what we saw, because it's quite complex. But basically knowing that these energies past people, and also energies that haven't been in a human body, are there waiting for you when you pass. So Okay, while we're sleeping, we've got this energy coming in. At the same time, our nervous system actually has sort of three channels that, or several channels run, but three of them, I believe they were showing me, they had like little crosses going down into our body. And they explained that the reason that these actually, our body shuts these off is so that when we start to get these large downloads of information, these large dreams, we actually won't physically react to them. So there are 3 points. I haven't looked that up scientifically, but I'm sure that there's like a biological reason, you know, proven that actually happens. And I believe it's 3 because I'm seeing 3 crosses. So I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in that field. So why we're there, that it has 2 kind of important roles that are happening, why this energy of these spirits is actually coming into our body and why our body is in a deeper sleep. I believe, and they didn't explain this properly, but I believe that we sort of go through different sleeps and we'll have different levels depending on how deep we get into what they call a REM sleep, or what I know as a REM sleep. I could see that was where the bulk of what was happened during that time, including the first thing that they told me, which is that energy actually converts our stored energy for the day, like that we've received through the day, and recharges that back into our physical body. So it runs through our nervous system and it re-energizes and it puts energy back into each of our points. And at the same time, it clears out kind of negative or stuck energy from the day, like aches and pains that have kind of built up from anxiety or fears or whatever it has. It'll actually help release that. And so the second thing that it actually does is it processes our body's emotions, our fears, our desires, grief, concerns, whatever we've actually got going on in the day, through the use of dreams, short and long-term paths to sort of show through. Like if there's something that you're worrying about coming up, they'll actually show you several scenarios of that. Now, as you can see, there's all the different points coming in. That is meaning that what's happening at simultaneously this is happening. So some of the souls might be working on, you know, fears and things. Others are working on really positive thing for us. Some of them might be our sexual desires, you know, that we've got in our brain, but we don't want to sort of, you know, have to burst out of our skins to live these sort of things. They will actually show us scenarios and deal with that. They'll also, really interesting, revisit old paths. They didn't show me this first, but then they showed me it later. So say I was 20 and they showed me a path forward for the next 40 years. When I'm 60, they may actually go back and show me the path and show this is where we got to last time on this path, and this is where now there's new decisions going through. I actually had a dream. So anyone who wants to look back, One Foot in Both Worlds, Keeping It Real with Tanya and Nette, series 4, I think it is episode 5, but I will put it in the comments. Have a look, and at the end of that podcast, I talk about this dream in detail, and it's about doing exactly this, revisiting back an old path. It's super cool. Anyway, the other thing that it says, it processes what should feed into our conscious mind. So we don't remember all our dreams. Some people won't remember any of them dreams. Some people will get kind of feelings, deja vus, all these different things will happen to them in their conscious life. But if you can imagine, it's like your subconscious is like a bullet train and your conscious is like a tiny ant. And that's the different speed that they go at. But your subconscious has the ability to feed at a rate that the conscious can actually understand it. So as I mentioned earlier, your subconscious is valuable when you sleep, but it's also valuable when you're awake, and it will feed to the conscious. In some stages, your whole intuitive system kind of also sits within that subconscious, and it will feed out to the conscious, you know, don't go in that room, or don't do this and don't do that. You don't actually have to be aware that this is actually happening. But one of the things that they mentioned to me was that you'll hear, there's a saying, you know, look within. or I discovered it once I stopped looking, searching, I actually found the answers. And that is because the answers are actually inside of you. That's what they're trying to tell us. This subconscious brain holds so much information. It is a tool that we couldn't survive without. We wouldn't just rejuvenate our energy, so we wouldn't be able to function the next day. We would wake up super tired. B, when we actually process this information in like our emotions and all of those sorts of things going through, it actually needs to be able to do that for us so that we can wake up less anxious and less worried and all those sorts of things. So it's able to do that in such a way that it can, you know, in one night you can have 500, 600 different channels and dreams going through your own body. Some that will be like a 5-minute thing, and some will be a 5-week or a 5-month or whatever. It just depends. They did explain that they don't do the long-term paths very often, but you end up getting a lot of short-term paths. That's very common. And one of the reasons that they don't do the long-term path very often with you, which is like, they might give you 20 different options of where it's going through, is because that actually takes a lot out of the smaller ones that they can process at the same time. And to function normally through life, we don't need that big data at one stage. So if we then talk about how do dreams relate to the subconscious, as I said, we process energy at a speed our conscious could never understand, if that makes sense. So as I said, we've got the bullet train and we've got the ants. The way that the bullet train information comes in, it then uses our senses to translate the energies, the information, to a medium that our physical bodies can communicate. So they're talking about visual, sound, smell, taste. You'll even feeling on your body, they mean, with that, or that emotional gut feeling, those sorts of things. And so our dreams are the translation and processing of information from these energies. And the subconscious actually is where the dreams happen. And then, as I said before, they will just feed little things that we need out into our main conscious. Okay, how else can we access our subconscious? It's a pretty important question because, there are lots of different ways. And one of them I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail coming up, or four different ones. But for now, I'm going to actually talk about mediums in particular. Anyone who's watched a podcast, One Foot in Both Worlds, Keeping It Real with Tanya and Nette, Tanya and I are both mediums, but we actually receive information slightly differently. We were talking about this. We were doing medical mediumships. We were looking into something for someone who was unwell. And I do like a type of energy body scan that I go down, whereas Tanya actually sits in it and, she'll explain this better, but she seems to just have a knowing. She gets this information coming through and doesn't actually need to sort of connect into that person's energy as a body scan. She connects into it and then just has information come through. And because we do it that way, we will get slightly different versions of the same illness, if that makes sense. So I might actually feel the illness, whereas she will get words and actual data coming through of what's going on. So it actually makes a really powerful joint sort of look at people to get a more thorough understanding, if that makes sense. So some people have the ability to access subconscious while they're awake, okay? As I said, I'm going to go into a few more ways we can do that coming up. But in this case, we're talking about mediums. So these people can retrieve information from energy sources outside of their own sort of body while they're not in a sleeping dream. So this comes in different forms, exactly the same as we talked about with dreams. It's visual, sound, it's smell, it's taste, it's feelings, it's knowings, it's all those type of things. And knowing's an interesting one with mediums because that is actually something, and all of these are for intuitives as well. So you'll just have this thing where you just know something all of a sudden, or you like you'll just hear yourself saying something. You're like, I don't know where I read that. I just know it. That's actually knowing. And that is feeding through your subconscious to your conscious. And because it wasn't something that you learned in a conscious state, you actually received it through the energies that then went through your subconscious. You kind of don't know where you got it from. So in some ways, mediumship or intuitiveness is exactly the same as dreaming. It's just awake dreaming. So I'm very visual. I'm what they call someone who has third eye vision, or a clairvoyant. And I've kind of had this my whole life without even knowing that everyone else didn't, but I will literally see pictures when and I will have to translate those pictures. If I'm speaking to someone who has passed, I will often get that up in pictures to start with, and it gets to a vibration, and then I'll start to get words and knowledge coming through. So I'll do a bit of both. I very rarely get smell, and I very rarely get taste, but I actually do sometimes. And I think it's just the way that my body reaches into the subconscious. I tend to be able to bring the visual and the sound and the knowing, and even the feeling. I definitely get, like when I do my body scanning, it's very much about feeling how they feel. So the subconscious is feeding the medium that information. Now, what happens is we actually have energy connected we sort of are energy around our bodies and with inside our body. And that energy can actually go and connect with someone else's energy. It'll go through their subconscious into our subconscious. Sometimes, other times it will just go through, like it will be picked up directly from them, and then it will come through our subconscious and be translated by the subconscious into a thing. So the subconscious is the medium's translator. It is an intuitive translator. So I know I've written here how do mediums relate to our subconscious, but it's also how does your intuition relate to your subconscious? Because it's exactly the same way. It's just in lesser detail than the way that a medium can do. It's almost like a medium has a slightly bigger door and they can sort of see in there, and that translation ability is larger. Yeah, so it's that much of the door. It's also really interesting because I am so visual that I am such a dreamer. I'm a lucid dreamer. I can go back into dreams. I have repeat dreams. I can remember a dream from a week ago when I'm awake, and that night I can go back in and I can continue that dream, or I can look more detail into that dream. They also showed me when we're looking at past lives, which I don't have on there because as I'm talking about this, they are actually telling me more information. So we did a past life video, which was really interesting message from Spirit, episode 4, and it was number 2. I remember that. Sorry, series 4, episode 2. I remember that being episode 2 because we were meant to do something else, and Spirit came in and said, no, you're doing past lives. So, and we learned a lot. Tanya and I learned a lot ourselves while we were doing it. But they're saying like past life memories are brought in through the subconscious in the same way. So they will come when I'm looking into someone else's energy. They will actually show me memories from their subconscious, and it will come in, and then it will be translated in a visual for me. It's really important to understand too, a medium's pictures, just as in your dreams, are actually individual to that person. So my image of safety might be very different to your image of safety. My image of secrets is actually a box. And there's a few different types that I've found have come up, but and depending on how locked and what it's made at, depends on how deep-seated the secrets are. If someone else's secrets might be a lock, like just a latch, or there could be lots of different visuals for secrets. And that's same within your dreams. I'm going to be doing a really fun tutorial. Anyone who wants to go on it is free. Everything that I do is free because Spirit has basically told me that this is information that needs to be heard. So I don't need a roadblock in the way of cost. And it also helps people to know that I'm not trying to get anything out of this. I'm actually happily giving my time to, I mean, it's cool for me as well. I'm enjoying learning the information, but I'm happily sharing the information because I honestly believe that we should be passing this down from generation, and somewhere back in different cultures and different generations, some of us actually lost this information going down. So we need everyone to be rebooting everyone back up. And by taking the finance out of it, in a situation where I can afford to, and I know most people would if they could, but we all rely on money, unfortunately, then it actually just enables more people to hear the information. If anyone who wants to do the dream tutorial, I'm actually going to be doing that on, it's kind of making your own dream journal, in effect, of like, if you see a train in your dream, what does it mean? If you see, your teeth falling out, what does that mean? All those sorts of things. It's one that's not Googling, not going to there. It's actually your own, it's a way of sourcing your own interpretation, so that when you have a dream next, you could go into your own visual diary and say, okay, oh wow, that means this sort of thing. And the memories that you have, you can start almost giving spirit a way of communicating with you in your own language. It's got to make sense to you. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to talk about with the subconscious in this podcast, I know that there's going to be a lot more spoken about, is just the ways that we can also, so, how else can we access our subconscious? And it's interesting because Spirit came with a warning for this too. So at the end of these 4 that I'm going to talk about, I also would love you to listen to the warning on it, because they don't do that very often. So I think when they do, it's important to understand. And they're actually giving me more information on the warning too. I'm trying to block them out so I can just get the information that I've got, but I'll try and remember that when I get to it and give you more information when I get there. But I'm getting lots of little pictures popping up. Okay, so one of the ones they said is actually when people are put in comas. So either have gone into a coma due to an accident, or medically put under into a coma for an operation. Is what they're talking about in this space. So medically assisted deep sleep, in effect. And what they're saying is during this time, there is large amounts of information that are actually in processing, like you would do when you're actually in a deep REM sleep. And because you're in this deep state, you actually drop down quickly into this deep state. And what they're doing is making sure that you're not moving and you're not doing anything. Basically, the process that I talked about. And as I said, I don't understand this medically, but they're showing me those again with coma, but actually even more than that. So it's almost like they're stopping your body from being associated with your head in a physical kind of control, if that makes sense. So during this time, you can have absolutely amazing and quite high frequency, because you're staying under it for so long. They can actually download a lot of information at that one time. And they often use this situation to show you paths forward. We talked about it before, and when you've got a lot going on in your life, they need to actually use the information for short things and to get your emotions and everything under control. But when someone goes into a coma or a deep sleep, especially for an operation, you actually go down to a level where they know you're going to be in there for so long, and they can use this to go, okay, this was your path backwards. We talked about backwards path before, and this is your path moving forward. And this is where we're at the moment. And some people have even experienced, they're showing me where they have that thing where this can be the end of their life and they can leave or they can go back. Sometimes they're explaining to me that that's how it will be remembered, but actually they were never going to not go back down. It's actually they're processing the fear. When they were going under, they were afraid of dying, and so they're showing them all different scenarios of if they did die, that their family would be okay, and if they, all this sort of stuff that they'd already been processing days before they went into the operation, so that the people could go into the operation calmly. So sometimes people will actually remember, they're showing me information from a couple of nights or 3 nights, 4 nights earlier or whatever like that. Not actually the one that happened on the night of their operation or their day of their operation. But amongst this, you'll get a whole varied things of recall of people having these amazing experiences. Some people will come out of them and they've been shown a new path forward, which they've then subconsciously agreed to go, okay, can you feed this to my conscious? And they will come out being happier, kind of lighter sort of feeling people, and even more spiritual people, because that they've got a larger seep sort of through to their consciousness first, and sometimes only lasts for a small amount of time. But you'll notice people after an operation that they will sometimes get this kind of connection that's still there, and it's almost like a lag of it, and then they get back to what they are, or they'll stay like that. This is also where we hear a lot of NDEs, so near-death experiences. They're showing me that people will recall a near-death experience. Some people won't remember it, some people will, and that some people remember parts of it, that type of things. Usually they're saying that heavy dreamers or mediums, you know, people who can access information while they're awake, they will normally remember them clearer. Part of them anyway. You'll never remember it all. You can dream like 10 years in a night, so, or in it under an operation. The other thing with coma that they showed me, which is really super cool as well, is I remember reading about this about 10 years ago, this type of thing. It wasn't quite what they showed me, but I remember hearing something about it. So when they started to talk about this really intrigued me, was that the one I read about was a guy who had been in a coma, and he had like dreamt, I can't remember if it was like 10 or 20 years, or it might have been longer of his life. And then he woke up and he'd actually only been in a coma for a year or something like that, or less. I don't think it was that long, not a long time. And he woke up and then he realized he was like young still, and his life that he had, his wife and his kids, didn't actually exist. So he was kind of like in this shock of like, hang on, where's that? And he kind of felt like he had seen a parallel life. And anyone who goes back to watching the dream video, we talk about we actually do want parallel lives, and how dreams can actually feel like parallel lives, because we are shown visuals of different lives, and how some people can assume that, oh, that's, you know, a parallel life, but actually it's a dream. It's a not your physical body has not been in that life. It's just something you've been shown, which I loved. Anyone in parallel lives, I was never into them, and now I'm looking at this, I understand them so much better. I realize that it is just their dreams, their visions from energetic visions, which are crucially important. Like, we wouldn't be getting them if they weren't, but they're not, you know, it never sat right with me, and now I understand why this is it. Okay, the next thing, as I waffle on, sorry about this, is through meditation, music, water, wind, all those things, going, hug a tree, walking through nature. That actually can increase our vibration and allow us to open that door to our subconscious in a better way. It's where our conscious gets less kind of cluttered, and we can sort of slow our conscious down and stop feeding it with so much information, so that it can actually go in and have a look at some of the important things that our subconscious is actually translating down to us. This can be done in an awake thing. A lot of people who go near water will actually feel it, but it also can get where you're in a trance state, or anywhere in between. I think most of us who have had any type of meditation, or for me, I do a lot of walking, and I can actually get into that state. I'm actually, the older I'm getting, and the more that I am having mediumship type work that I'm doing, energy work, I can feel myself sometimes where I'm in that kind of in between, and I'm accessing information, and I'm relying on my conscious to deal with what I'm doing, and I'll be like, oh, and I realize I'm actually almost dangerous, in that I should be sitting still and doing that. So they did show me a warning of me putting the car into reverse instead of forward. And my friend will laugh at that, because she was in the car with me. I think I put into drive instead of thing. When I was talking to her about spirit, and they were sort of saying, be careful when you're doing meditations or things like that, or listening to music in particular. They're showing me that music can lift the vibration. So be mindful that you need to tell your body to be in the conscious just as much as in the subconscious. Okay, the next one is an interesting one too that they brought up, which is drugs. And they're saying both recreational and prescription drugs can enable us to sort of bypass, almost open a door a bit more. I know that there's some sort of mushrooms that people use. There's a whole bunch of different things. I'm dyslexic, so my recall on words for those sort of things, I just embarrass myself if I start listing them off. So let's just say there are some forms of drugs. They do a warning on that one too, so I want to talk about that in a second, but I'll go to the next one because it's the same warning that relates to this. And that last one is mania or mental health conditions. And they can actually open a pathway to the subconscious so that we can access that easier. And is sometimes what people will see as being, you know, a psychotic episode is actually someone accessing their subconscious directly, and the information comes in at a speed that the translation to the conscious is not enough there, or they're receiving the information not sort of fed properly from the subconscious to the conscious. And what they were explaining to me can happen then is you can get like this elated experiences. So this is where the warning comes, that some of these experiences can cause false realities and information received incomplete. Okay, so they gave me an example just before as I was trying to talk of where someone will get some information, say they're working on a project and they get this information that 4 people in the group should work together and it will be perfect because, you know, I know they've been fighting in the past, but they're not going to now. And actually what happens is during your subconscious, you were shown many scenarios, many sort of parallel situations that could have happened, of which that was one of them. And then somehow that information has come out to you and you were shown them in a positive light, and then you were also shown them in a negative light. But what's come out to you is you're only seeing part of it and you're seeing the positive bits and you're like, oh, that's going to work. And there is a saying called, you know, clarity in the light of day, or you know, oh, I'll just wait, I'm sure it'll be clear in the light of day. Now that actually exists for this reason. They brought that up and they kept saying it to me in about 10 different ways. So there must be different ways of saying that. But, you know, I can see clear in the light of day. They're showing me it again. And what they're actually trying to explain is that when you're rational, you're conscious, actually takes hold of that information, you need your conscious to be driving the actions, because it will also relate to physically what is happening around you. Consciousness is only the reality of what is happening or what you are actually seeing it. Now you can see things incorrectly, or not incorrectly, in one way, and actually miss things, and your subconscious will help you to sort of bring all different parallel angles in it. But also if you don't have the conscious as part of that, you can actually be really receiving a false reality, false information or incomplete information, and therefore you're making a decision and you put these 4 people together at work and it just goes to the shit, and you're like, wow, that is not how that played out in my head when I did that, you know, meditation that I went through, and I was like trying to find it. It was like, because you got yourself to a frequency where you pulled in the wrong information. So just their warning that meditation and music and water and walking through nature are absolutely fantastic. If drugs are your thing, recreational drugs, like, it's not a thing for me, but knowing I can actually get to that level really high, maybe if I couldn't, I would, but it's not my thing. I have had a lot of experience with people with mania and with mental health conditions, and I am aware of this actually happening to them. So please hold on to those warnings, but at the same time know that some really good stuff can come from there, that anyone who is a water baby and knows that that's where they do their best thinking, do not think that they are saying not to do that. They are absolutely saying quiet down your conscious so that you can let your subconscious through, because your subconscious is the bullet train. It's got so much information. It is so fast. It has got, you know, things. Just make sure that when you're receiving it, you sit and think about the information, put logic to the information, which lives in the conscious brain, and then actually take action and sort of clear the difference between the two. I hope that this makes sense to you. It's pretty exciting for me, so I hope that you sort of get the same energy out of it that I did. I understand so much more my subconscious. I understand why some of us can see and hear things more. I feel like I know where that's coming from. I often say to people, it's like a collective coming through. I now can see that it is a collective coming through into your subconscious, and then you're translating that directly out through. They're showing me that when people are channeling, they're actually going into subconscious to do that, and they don't actually do it direct, because it has to be slowed down, but their conscious doesn't slow it down, their subconscious slows it down. So it'll slow it down. They'll actually see that sort of energy brewing up of wanting to channel through them, and then they'll just actually give that information directly through the consciousness, through the subconscious, and in some ways bypassing the conscious parts of the consciousness. Not all of the consciousness, but they're saying parts of the consciousness, because now they're showing me things pulled apart. I think I'm getting too complex in that diagram. I'm never going to be able to explain in this podcast. Anyway, please like and subscribe if you would like to hear more about this. Definitely, if you're keen on doing the dream workshops, they will be free on my on One Foot in Both Worlds website and our YouTube. And we've also got some really exciting stuff coming up. Tanya, who is the other half of One Foot in Both Worlds, is doing some really cool stuff with spirit on medical herbs and I'm losing the word for it, but remedies and things like that. So I'm finding that fascinating. I don't get much of that type of information, so I love that when someone else does, I can actually learn from that too. I'll put some details up on that, but if you like and subscribe, that will come up on the same channel, and you'll be notified of when that's on there. Also, please, if you can put your comments down below if information that you have, maybe you've got more information in subconscious that I didn't mention, maybe something resonated with you. If there's something that questions that you want me to try and answer, if I've got the answers, I will actually do it. If not, I can try and sit in with spirit and see where I can get some of the answers through. Otherwise, we just have to assume that for now we're not meant to know. So thank you so much for listening. And I hope my diagrams and my information were enough for you to understand what's happening. And yeah, see you all hopefully soon.